All right, let's do this. We're going to tackle the entire story of human civilization. But forget the boring list of dates and kings you learned in school. We're looking for something deeper, the blueprint. The pattern of building things up, scaling them, watching them break, and starting all over again that really defines our history. Let's dive in. So this is the big question, right? How did we, Homo sapiens, go from being just one of several human-like species to basically running the whole show? Well, the answer, in one word, is civilization. But what does that word even mean? Let's unpack it. So here's our roadmap. We're going to break this huge story down into 5 big leaps. First, we'll look at the basic toolkit every society needs. Then, the powerful ideas that run the show, from inside our heads. Next up, how empires got so massive. Then, what happens when it all comes crashing down. And finally, how we build a new world from the rubble. All right, first things first, building the blueprint. You can't build a skyscraper without a solid foundation and some basic tools. Well, it's the exact same for society. This is the story of how we got our starter pack. And here's what's so wild. These first civilizations, they weren't all looking at each other's homework. They popped up independently, all trying to solve different, huge problems at the same time. Mesopotamia? They were all about figuring out food. The Indus Valley? They were total geeks for city planning and, believe it or not, plumbing. And Egypt? Well, Egypt was obsessed with building for eternity. But really, it all kicks off with agriculture. I mean, this was a total game changer. It meant we weren't just chasing our dinner anymore. We were growing it. We could finally stop wandering and build actual homes. But check out this crazy little detail. When we settled down and became farmers, we actually got shorter. Yeah, we basically traded in our tall, athletic bodies for a steady meal. Kind of wild, right? Okay, so once you've got a bunch of people living together in one place, what happens? You need rules. And this quote, an eye for an eye, it just perfectly captures that next giant leap, writing it all down. Now, let's be clear. Hammurabi's code was not about fairness for everyone, not by a long shot. But it was the first time the rules were put out there for all to see. It was the moment we agreed to be ruled by words on a stone, not just by whoever was strongest. So you've got food, you've got laws, now you need a system. And wow, did ancient Egypt give us the ultimate blueprint for top-down control. This social pyramid wasn't just a ladder. It was a machine, a perfectly oiled machine where every single person, every farmer, every soldier, every priest was a cog, all designed to channel every last bit of power straight to the top, to the pharaoh, the one guy who was the connection to the gods. But here's the thing, bricks and laws can only get you so far. The real secret sauce for holding a civilization together, it's the stuff you can't see. It's about building structures inside our heads. The next great leap wasn't about engineering stone, it was about engineering minds. I mean, just look at ancient Greece. You couldn't get 2 more different ideas for how to run a society than Sparta and Athens. Sparta was a machine designed for one thing, creating the perfect warrior. Life was tough, rigid, all for the state. And then you have Athens, a messy, loud, chaotic experiment in democracy, all focused on creating the perfect citizen. It's a clash we still see today, right? The tension between absolute order and individual freedom. Meanwhile, halfway across the world in China, thinkers were wrestling with the same big questions. And they came up with this incredible 1-2 punch of ideas. You had Confucianism, which was all about how to act in public, know your role, respect your elders, keep society running smoothly. And then you had Taoism, which was all about your inner world, how to find peace, go with the flow, and not stress about things you can't control. One for the outside, one for the inside. Genius. And then there's Plato. He looks around at all the chaos in Athens and asks this absolutely radical question. He basically says, hey, maybe the person in charge shouldn't be the richest or the strongest or even the most popular. Maybe it should be the wisest. This whole idea of a philosopher king. I mean, we are still arguing about that today. Who really deserves to be in charge? Okay, so now we've got the basic toolkit and these powerful ideas. So what's next? Well, you go big. You scale it up. Welcome to the age of empires, where ambitious rulers took the whole concept of civilization and just hit the accelerator. And if you want to understand just how big a change this was, just think about one number, 100,000. 100,000. That's how big the Persian army was that marched on Greece. This wasn't just a neighborhood squabble anymore. This was a battle of civilizations. And the new rule of the game was simple: expand or be swallowed whole. And when it comes to scaling up, nobody, and I mean nobody, did it better than Rome. They were so strategic about it. First, take out your main competitor, Carthage, and own the seas. Check. Then, send guys like Julius Caesar to push the borders out. Check. Then, link the whole thing together with some of the most amazing roads and aqueducts the world has ever seen. And finally, they flipped the switch on their whole government, going from a messy republic to a powerhouse empire. So how in the world do you keep a lid on a place that big and diverse? Well, centuries later, a guy named Machiavelli spelled out the dark, honest truth. He basically said, look, it's nice if people love you, but love fades. Fear sticks around. It's a pretty cynical way to look at it, but for these emperors, it was just reality. You ruled by making sure people were more afraid of you than they were of anything else.
But here's the thing about empires. They all fall, eventually. So now we get to the part of the cycle where it all starts to come apart at the seams. We're talking about collapse, new beliefs, and the weird new world that grows out of the rubble.
And here's the thing about a big fall. It's never one single moment. Empires don't just blow up. They unravel, thread by thread. For Rome, it was this slow, agonizing process. First, it got too big to manage, so it split. Then, the unthinkable happened. The city of Rome, the heart of it all, was actually sacked. Imagine the shock. And the end? It wasn't some epic battle. The last emperor was just kind of removed. It ended not with a bang, but with a whimper. But when a power that huge disappears, it leaves a massive vacuum, and something always rushes in to fill it. In this case, it was two incredibly powerful ideas, Christianity and Islam. The organizing principle of society completely shifted. It wasn't about loyalty to some guy in a palace anymore. It was about loyalty to God. This new kind of belief system would completely redraw the map of the world for the next 1,000 years. So, with Rome gone, Europe just shattered into a million little pieces. It was chaos. And feudalism was the answer to that chaos. It was a deal, really. If you were a peasant, you basically said to the local tough guy with a castle, I'll work your land if you promise to protect me and my family from, the Vikings. And the craziest part, the same basic system popped up in China centuries earlier for the exact same reason. It's like it's humanity's default setting for when things go wrong.
Okay, buckle up for our last section. We're going to do a super quick run-through of the huge, world-breaking events that ended the Middle Ages and basically kicked off the world we know today. Think of these as massive earthquakes for civilization. Yet the Mongols, who were brutal, for sure, but they also reconnected East and West like never before. Then the Black Death travels along those new Mongol trade routes and wipes out maybe a third of Europe, completely upending the old feudal system. Then Constantinople falls, slamming the door on the old trade routes, which forces Europeans out onto the oceans. And that hunt for a new route leads directly to 1492 and a collision between two halves of the planet that changed everything. Forever.
And what comes after all that chaos and disruption? A rebirth. The Renaissance. And I just love this quote from Michelangelo. He's not waiting for divine inspiration. He's saying the beauty is already inside the stone, and his job is just to let it out. That's the whole vibe of the Renaissance, right? A newfound belief in what we as humans can do. It's a total reboot of how we see our place in the universe.
So here we are, back in our own time. We've seen this pattern play out over and over again, right? You build something, you make it bigger, it breaks, and you build something new from the pieces. So the final question isn't about the past, it's about right now. When you look around at our world, with all its incredible technology, its global connections, but also all its massive fractures and challenges, what part of the cycle do you think we're in?